A great deal of anime that come out are based on serialized manga, the anime typically working both as an advertisement for people who haven't read the manga, as well as fan service for those who have. On both fronts, it is typically good for bringing in money. The adaptation can be pretty shitty and still be considered a success, so long as it garners enough attention from both newcomers and those who are already fans. That being said, it is not uncommon for an anime adaptation of a manga to stand as a good show in its own right, but such adaptations are often left open-ended or leave out parts of the manga in order to get through the story at a brisk pace. It's not particularly rare to have a TV anime fail to garner significant attention for the source material, fail to be a good show in its own right, and have a relatively small fan base to begin with. So many shows get tossed out each anime season that there are probably plenty of examples of poor TV anime based on other material. But I'd bet that many of these anime source material wasn't that great either. It's rather uncommon for a show with great source material to end up being a bad show, just as it is uncommon for a studio to attempt doing a full adaptation on a rather unpopular but long-running work. Karakuri Circus is an example of a TV anime that was made too late to advertise the manga, too late to appease manga fans, and too insufficiently to stand alone without the manga supplementing it. During my viewing of every anime released during 2018, the first 4 episodes of Karakuri Circus were a breath of fresh air, where great pacing and great characterization came together to form a short arc that felt like 12 episodes condensed into 4. The show reminded me of the 2011 Hunter x Hunter adaptation, and how strongly that show handled its large ensemble cast and its wildly paced arcs. I was ready to put down the Karakuri Circus anime as one of my favorite shows if it was able to keep up this level of quality. And I even made a video upon completing the first 4 episodes of me singing the show's praises and airing my frustrations that more people weren't watching it. Then I got around to watching the other 32 episodes of the series, and sadly to say, the show dips in quality remarkably after the first arc. Karakuri Circus had a fantastic first 4 episodes that saw the main character Masaru Saiga, an 11-year-old who inherited 18 billion yen from his deceased father, fight off teams of kidnappers and assassins with the help of a puppet wielder named Shirogane and a martial artist named Narumi Kato. Narumi inspires Shirogane and Masaru to change as people, Masaru seeing him as an older brother figure, and Shirogane finding herself falling in love with him. By the end of the arc, Masaru succeeds in growing as a person, finally finding the will to stand up for himself and his friends, even if it means putting his life on the line. He puts a plan into motion, and after pulling off some nutty feats of skill and bravery, he saves himself, Shirogane, and Narumi from the kidnappers and assassins. This ends in tragedy, however, as Masaru and Narumi end up falling back down to a burning mansion when they were making their escape. Narumi protects Masaru in the fire, but apparently dies, leaving only his arm behind. Though the first arc had a really fast pace, putting a lot of character development into 4 episodes, it was easy to follow and did a good job focusing on the relationship between the 3 main characters of Masaru, Shirogane, and Narumi. After this, the show becomes a convoluted mess that quickly bubbles far out beyond this scope, and seems to have lost the central aspect that made the show engaging to begin with. So what happened here? Why was an anime made for a manga that started in the 90s and ended 12 years before the show came out? With the show having a script that is so all over the place that even though the show could be considered competently made, it still has a score of 7.08 on my anime list. The issue is not actually with the source material, but with the fact that Studio Voln tried doing a full adaptation of a 426 chapter manga in not 100, not 50, but 36 episodes. A great video by Ember Reviews posits that the best way to adapt shonen manga into an anime is to have about 2 chapters to every 1 episode released, as to maintain the pacing of the manga. While that video looks at manga released in Shonen Jump in particular, it would not be a stretch to say that Karakuri Circus could have been done justice in this way by attempting to limit the amount of chapters adapted per episode and paying attention to translating pacing. Instead, we have a situation in which, generally speaking, almost 12 chapters are adapted for every 1 episode. For reference, if you were to adapt the Hunter x Hunter manga in a similar way, and end on the 13th chairman election arc like the 2011 adaptation did, you would have a 28 episode show. Imagine telling the action-packed and expansive arcs of Hunter x Hunter with each only having like 4 episodes to say their piece. The Hunter exam would be 3 episodes. The Zoldyck family arc probably would happen off-screen or in a flashback. Heaven's Arena will be 2 episodes. Yorknu will be 4 episodes. Greed Island will be 6 episodes. Chimera Ant would be 11 episodes. And the Chairman election arc would only be 2 episodes. I'm only being so verbose about this because the 2011 adaptation is a 148 episode anime. Most people would be revolted by the idea of cutting down a series as great as Hunter x Hunter to be so rushed and leave out so much content. Could you imagine the Chimera Ant arc only being 11 episodes long? This is exactly what Studio Voln did to Karakuri Circus. Honestly, I think it's impressive that Studio Voln was even able to make such a dense adaptation and still have it be able to stand alone as a comprehensible story, even if it does expect a lot from its viewers in terms of them being able to absorb all the information and in terms of their suspension of disbelief. That being said, just because an adaptation is much shorter than the source material or cuts out large chunks of the source does not mean it isn't worth viewing. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World condenses the 6 volumes of the graphic novels into a 1 hour 50-minute film, and it is still a great movie that can stand alone as its own work. If we want to see why the TV anime Karakuri Circus is a bad adaptation, we're going to need to crack open its ribcage and poke around a bit. For reference going forward, the Karakuri Circus manga splits itself into 2 storylines following Chapter 29. The circus arcs, which largely follow Masaru and Shirogane and their time spent with the Nakamachi Circus, and the Karakuri arcs, which follows Narumi and his work with the group known as the Shirogane. The show does a great job attaching you to these characters early on, forming a trio that you want to see grow and develop over many arcs. Masaru starts out as a wimpy kid who has already had a hard life, and over the first arc, we see him rage against his circumstances and become a stronger person for it, both in terms of his skill and his kindness towards others. Narumi is a brutish yet kind-hearted martial artist who gives the impression of being a meathead while also being a giant softie. Shirogane is a cold but troubled individual who carries many years of trauma as a burden and only learns to begin to open up through her experiences with Narumi and Masaru. The show and the manga set these characters up to develop together, giving the viewers and readers a trio so perfect that it could easily carry the franchise on the strength of itself. That is why it is such a gut punch when Narumi is taken away. Suddenly, this ideal has been shattered, so quickly and so early on that it immediately makes the viewer ponder where the story could even go from here. To replace that trio with any substitute seems like an immediate step down from where it was. The manga manages to avoid this potential loss in fidelity by quickly introducing the Nakamachi Circus. The Nakamachi Circus is a rundown, out-of-work trio of a father and his 2 adoptive sons. The manga does well to show that while they are in dire straits as a circus, and although they are about to be thrown out of their apartment, they are still loyal to each other and have a real passion for the circus. That passion at the moment lies dormant, however, their business being lacking to a point of them effectively being out of business. As such, they crack a harebrained scheme to steal computers from a local school in order to get their money. Kazuhiro Fujita's ability to craft a both dire and comical scenario for this group immediately endears the reader to them. Their issues are real, and they have a real sense of gravity, but Fujita also lightens the tone and shows that they have found themselves in this situation because they are utterly daft and hard-headed. They end up getting involved in helping Shirogane save Masaru and some of Masaru's classmates from assassins who were not dealt with in the first arc, showing that though they are dumb and selfish in some ways, they are soft-hearted, not unlike Narumi. Fittingly, they come to fill the void in the story left by Narumi's absence, Masaru deciding to run away with the circus with Shirogane. This arc also shows that they are quite capable in high-stress situations, chasing a car on the highway and helping kids escape their kidnappers while walking a tightrope moving what is probably well over 70 miles per hour. They are shown from the beginning to be capable of dealing with danger and being able to come out on top. So how does the anime handle this 10-chapter arc and these characters? It first starts by trying to condense the entire thing and 3 intermission chapters into 1 episode. It introduces the Nakamachis during a meeting with their landlord, with the father, Shinobu, flung up at the landlord after he makes degrading remarks about the circus. Later in that episode, we see that they are cleaning the house, with Hiro and Noriyuki, the sons, talking about how maybe the circus is out of date, and Shinobu buying into the idea that maybe they are truly doomed as a circus. This completely changes the tone of the scenario. In the manga, the whole family wanted nothing but to be a circus, and they were in real danger of being thrown out of their home, which would potentially be a fatal blow to their operation. The anime presents the brothers as being two randos who do not really seem to be all that concerned about the circus failing, and the father being an old ringmaster who is ready to throw in the towel. This presents them as boring characters with no momentum going into the story. The anime doesn't even have them in danger of losing their housing, them cleaning up as a way to apologize to the landlord. Meanwhile, the manga presents them as goofy characters that are so bent on making their circus succeed, despite the truly brutal odds against them, that it makes the reader want to root for them. Think about what this does for the story. Let me ask you something. Do you really care about the circus or circus culture? The most likely answer is no, as circuses have long been presented as a series of cheap tricks to wow undiscerning audiences, especially when held on a small scale. It doesn't help that today, in the modern era, most people don't really go to circuses, and I would guess that a good majority of people watching anime have never attended a circus in their lives. So now we have a show that uses circus iconography as a major component of its aesthetic, and a show that is putting half of its main cast into a circus. This is our very first introduction to a circus troupe in the show, and how do they present the circus? A rundown, penniless group that doesn't really seem to care all that much about their life's work. We are given no reason to care about the circus, while the manga goes to great lengths to depict what makes the circus so great over the coming arcs, and all the hard work that goes into putting on a proper show. The anime never really touches on any of this, taking for granted what a circus does, just as the viewer probably would. This is not even considering the other side of the coin in this arc. Looking at what Masaru and Shirogane are doing, in the anime they are simply attending school, Shirogane winning over her class with her looks and skills, and Masaru learning to deal with his bullies. Masaru decides to join the circus because he wants to give Shirogane something to do, him having no real reason to pick the Nakamachi Circus, and him having no incentive for himself. This, paired with the unremitting kindness he shows his bullies, presents him as just being a nice guy with little room left to grow. In the manga, the kidnapping and near killing of him and his friends forces him to look at himself critically. Is he right to stay where he is in life, putting his classmates in danger even though the circumstances are out of his control? He is forced to think hard about the situation, and in the end, he makes the decision to run away with the circus, leaving his bully, who he has gotten time to know, a large sum of money to help his family's financial struggles. This was not even necessarily the right decision. His classmates grew to like him a lot, his bully and his class president growing fond of him. His bully, Atsushi, is heartbroken over this. He thought that he could become friends with Masaru and help to make up for the pain he had caused him. Atsushi had genuinely thought that Masaru would abandon him and let him die, so Masaru going so far to protect him and the other classmates left a life-changing impression on him. Now Masaru is suddenly left with money in his stead, nipping the relationship in the bud. As the phrase running away with the circus implies, Masaru is running from his problems by joining the Nakamachi Circus, immaturely thinking that removing himself from the lives of those around him will somehow improve their lives. That's one major difference between Masaru in the anime and Masaru in the manga. In the anime, Masaru is already Narumi by the end of the 4th episode. He's already become like a fully matured person as far as the show is concerned. On the manga, he continues to make childish mistakes and continues to act immaturely throughout the entire story, which makes sense because he is only 11 years old. This is a character we continue to see to grow throughout the story, rather than just be done by the end of the 4th arc, and then just, he just is a static character for the rest of the show. Thus, in the anime, there is no momentum on either side of the story. The Nakamachis are not in danger of being evicted, nor do they really seem to care all that much about keeping the circus alive. They are boring, static characters only there to present Masaru and Shirogane something to do to pass the time narratively. Meanwhile, Masaru and Shirogane are not even leaving the school. Doing the circus is a side thing in order to make Masaru seem like a good guy for giving Shirogane something to do for herself. Masaru does not really solve the problem with his bully, the bully simply staring when Masaru presented his scars that he got from the first arc. The momentum is also killed by not having the stragglers from the assassins from the first arc show up at all in the anime, making it seem like this episode is completely disconnected and lifeless. The way this first circus arc is handled also has massive implications for the story going forward, but we'll have to continue that in the next video. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to see more from this series, or you just want to see more content from me, consider subscribing. Alternatively, you can follow my Twitter to see what crazy things I have going on inside my head. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.